Well, Elvis, just got out of the army, and he was driving down Ventura Freeway, and he heard Guitar Man off my album.
This is the incredible, true story of how a relatively unknown Nashville guitarist named Jerry Reed walked into an Elvis Presley recording session and with just one song managed to do something that seemed impossible in 1967. He showed the king of rock and roll how his own comeback should sound. What happened in that studio would not only revive Elvis's career, but also launch Jerry Reed from obscurity to country music stardom. All because sometimes the student becomes the teacher, even when the student wrote the lesson plan. Elvis Presley, the man who changed music forever, is sitting in his Graceland mansion in 1967, and he's absolutely miserable. The king of rock and roll has become a prisoner of his own success, churning out one terrible movie after another. We're talking about films so bad that Elvis himself said, "The only thing worse than watching a bad movie is starring in one." Think about that for a second. This is the guy who gave us Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, and All Shook Up. The man who made teenage girls scream and parents clutch their pearls. And now he's trapped, making movies with titles like Clambake and Speedway that nobody wanted to see. Elvis knew his artistic soul was dying. Every single day in Hollywood was another nail in the coffin of his musical legacy. While the Beatles were revolutionizing music, while Bob Dylan was changing the world with his lyrics, Elvis Presley was stuck on movie sets pretending to be a race car driver or a charter boat captain. The frustration was eating him alive. He'd lie awake at night wondering if he'd ever make real music again, if he'd ever feel that electric connection with an audience, if he'd ever prove he was still the king. Because let's be honest, by 1967, a lot of people were writing Elvis off. The critics were saying he was washed up. The kids were listening to other artists. His career was in free fall, and everyone knew it. But then something happened that would change everything. Elvis was driving around Los Angeles, probably feeling sorry for himself, when a song came on the radio that stopped him cold. It was called Guitar Man, and it had this incredible groove, this rhythm that was pure Elvis territory. The song had everything he'd been missing, that raw, authentic sound that made him fall in love with music in the first place. This wasn't just another tune, this was his lifeline, his ticket back to relevance, his chance to prove to the world that Elvis Presley wasn't done yet. The song was written and recorded by a guy named Jerry Reed, a relatively unknown musician grinding it out in Nashville. Jerry Reed was one of those incredibly talented artists who seemed destined to remain in the shadows. A brilliant guitarist, a clever songwriter, and a charismatic performer who just couldn't catch a break. His version of Guitar Man had barely made a dent anywhere. It peaked at number 53 and disappeared faster than you could blink. For Jerry, it was just another song that didn't quite connect with audiences, another reminder of how tough it was to make it in the music business. But Elvis heard something in that song that nobody else did. He heard his comeback. So Elvis makes a decision that would either save his career or destroy it completely. He's going to Nashville to record Guitar Man. He's putting together the best session musicians money can buy. Harold Bradley, Chip Young, Charlie McCoy, Floyd Kramer, Buddy Harman, Bob Moore. These weren't just good musicians, these were legends. The Nashville A-Team. Guys who could make any song sound incredible. Elvis walks into RCA Studios with absolute confidence. He's got the perfect song, the perfect musicians, and the perfect plan. This is going to be his triumphant return to real music. This is the moment he proves he's still the king. But then something unprecedented happens, something that nobody in that room saw coming. These legendary musicians, guys who've recorded thousands of songs between them, can't get it right. For hours, they're trying to capture that Jerry Reed magic, and it's just not working. The rhythm isn't locking in. The groove that made Elvis fall in love with the song is nowhere to be found. Elvis is getting frustrated. His producer is getting nervous. The musicians are getting embarrassed. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be his comeback. Instead, it's turning into a disaster. And that's when someone in the room says the words that would change everything. Why don't you just go get that Jerry Reed guy and have him play it? It was such a simple idea, but it set off a chain reaction that nobody could have predicted. Because Jerry Reed wasn't sitting by his phone waiting for his big break. He was out on the Cumberland River, fishing, completely unaware that the king of rock and roll was about to change his life forever. The question is, would this scruffy, unprepared fisherman save Elvis's career, or would he destroy it completely? So they finally tracked down Jerry Reed, and this is where the story gets absolutely wild. Picture the most pristine recording studio you can imagine, RCA Studios in Nashville, where music history gets made. Elvis Presley is there in his perfect...
This man looks like he just crawled out of a swamp.
We're talking muddy fishing boots, clothes that haven't seen a washing machine in days, unshaven, smelling like river water and fish bait. Every single head in that room turns, and you can practically hear the collective gasp. This is not what anyone expected the savior of Elvis's recording session to look like. But here's where Jerry Reed proves that appearances mean absolutely nothing. The second he walks into that room, he lights it up with this incredible energy that's impossible to ignore. Elvis immediately connects with him. You can feel the chemistry between them from across the room. Despite looking like a wild man, Jerry has this infectious personality that just draws people in. Now, Jerry hadn't touched a guitar in days. He'd been completely relaxed, fishing all weekend, not thinking about music at all. And suddenly he's supposed to perform for the king of rock and roll, while every legendary musician in Nashville watches him like hawks, probably thinking, who is this guy and what makes him so special? Then Jerry Reed does something that blows everyone's minds. He sits down with his gut string guitar, not the fancy electric guitars these session guys are used to, and starts tuning it in ways that make absolutely no sense to anyone watching. These are seasoned professionals who think they know everything about guitar playing, and they're watching Jerry take the B string and tune it up a whole tone. Then he takes the low E string and tunes it down. The room goes dead silent. Everyone's thinking the same thing. What the hell is this guy doing? See, Jerry Reed didn't play guitar like anyone else in that room. While these Nashville cats were straight country pickers using picks and playing conventional tunings, Jerry had developed this completely unorthodox style that looked impossible. He played with his fingers, used these weird tunings that nobody understood, and had techniques that seemed to defy the laws of physics. So Jerry starts playing, and here's the thing, he was rusty as hell. He hadn't played in days and it showed. He's hitting clunkers, missing notes, struggling to get back into the groove. Any other producer might have sent him packing right there. Any other star might have said, "Get this amateur out of here." But Elvis heard something completely different. Every time Jerry hit a wrong note or stumbled, Elvis got more excited. He was hearing the raw, authentic feel that his polished session musicians couldn't capture, no matter how hard they tried. This wasn't perfect. It was real. And that's exactly what Elvis had been searching for. "That's it," Elvis kept saying. "That's the sound."
Jerry's getting frustrated with himself, though. He knows he's not playing his best, and he's embarrassed. Finally, he stops playing and looks up at Elvis, who's been watching him intently this whole time. And Jerry, being Jerry, breaks the tension in the most unexpected way possible. He pauses, looks directly at Elvis, and says, "God, you're handsome." Elvis bursts out laughing. The whole room cracks up. The ice is completely broken, and suddenly everyone's relaxed and having fun. That's when the real magic starts happening. Jerry explains to Elvis that what he's trying to play is actually two guitar parts layered together. If he plays one part now and overdubs the other later, they'll have the full sound. Elvis immediately gets it. This is why his session guys couldn't nail it. They were trying to play two parts at once. So they start working through it, take by take. Jerry's nerves settle down. His playing gets tighter. Elvis starts feeding off Jerry's energy, and with each take, Elvis's vocals get stronger, more confident. Jerry's feeding off Elvis's enthusiasm, and Elvis is feeding off Jerry's authenticity. The whole room transforms. These legendary musicians who'd been struggling all day suddenly find their groove. The rhythm section locks in. The song comes alive. You can feel the electricity in the air. By the 12th take, they had it. Pure gold. Elvis was sky high. The musicians were thrilled. Producer Felton Jarvis knew they just captured something special. But as Jerry Reed packed up his guitar and headed for the door, nobody realized they were about to face the biggest challenge of all. Jerry Reed is walking toward the door, probably thinking this is the best day of his career. He just nailed a recording session with Elvis Presley, made friends with the king himself, and helped create what everyone in that room knows is going to be a massive hit. Life is good. Then, the business guys step in. "Hold on there, Jerry, we need to talk about some paperwork." Now, Jerry had no idea what was coming. This was his first real brush with the big leagues, and he was about to get a crash course in how the music industry really worked. See, Colonel Tom Parker had a rule that wasn't written down anywhere, wasn't advertised, but everyone in Nashville knew it like gospel. If Elvis Presley was going to record your song, you had to sign away half of your publishing rights. Not negotiate, not discuss. You signed, or Elvis didn't record your song. And here's the twisted genius of Parker's system. It was actually a pretty good deal for most songwriters. If Elvis recorded your song, especially if it became a single, you were going to make serious money. Life-changing money. The kind of money that could set you up for decades. So most writers, even the successful ones, gritted their teeth and signed the papers. The business guys start explaining this to Jerry like they're doing him the favor of a lifetime. "Look, this is just how it works. Elvis records your song, it becomes a hit. You make a fortune. All you have to do is sign away half your publishing." Jerry Reed stops dead in his tracks. "What did you just say?" "Half your publishing. That's the deal. That's how it works with Elvis." Now, Jerry Reed was many things. A fisherman, a guitar player, a songwriter, a guy with a great sense of humor. But he was also a poker player, and poker players know how to read a room. They know when they're holding a winning hand, and they know when to push all their chips into the center of the table. Jerry looks around that studio. He sees Elvis over there, still buzzing from the session, still sky high from finally getting his song recorded the way he wanted it. He sees the musicians packing up, all of them knowing they just captured something special. He sees producer Felton Jarvis, probably already thinking about how this song is going to restart Elvis's recording career. And Jerry Reed realizes something that nobody else in that room has figured out yet. He's got all the power here. "Let me understand this," Jerry says, his voice getting a little harder. "You want me to sign away half my publishing for a song that Elvis has been trying to record all day without success? A song that your entire A-team of musicians couldn't get right? A song that only worked when I walked in here and played it myself?" The business guys start getting uncomfortable. This isn't how these conversations usually go, but Jerry's just getting started. "Look over there at Elvis. Look at how happy he is. Look at how excited he is about this recording. You really want to walk over there and explain to the king of rock and roll why his comeback single isn't going to be released? The room goes dead silent. Everyone's watching this scruffy fisherman from the Cumberland River stare down Colonel Tom Parker's entire operation. Because that's what's going to happen if I don't sign these papers, right? You're going to tell Elvis that his perfect recording session means nothing because Jerry Reed wouldn't play ball with your publishing deal? Jerry Reed had read the room perfectly. He knew Elvis loved the song, he knew the recording was incredible, and he knew that Elvis had final say over what got released, not Colonel Parker's business machine. The genius of Jerry's move wasn't just that he refused to sign, it was how he framed the refusal. He wasn't being difficult, he wasn't being greedy, he was protecting Elvis from his own business team's greed. "I'll tell you what," Jerry says, and you can hear the poker player in his voice. "You go ahead and explain to Elvis why this song isn't coming out. That's your business, but I'm not signing that paper." The business guys are scrambling now. They've never been in this position before. Usually, artists are so desperate for their shot with Elvis that they'd sign away their firstborn child. But Jerry Reed isn't desperate. He's confident. He knows exactly what he's worth in this moment. "You think Elvis is going to be happy when you tell him his comeback single is dead because you couldn't close a publishing deal?" And with that, Jerry Reed walked out of RCA Studios, leaving behind the most powerful machine in the music industry, completely stunned. The king of rock and roll had just met the one man who wouldn't bow to his empire. Jerry Reed's victory wasn't just about one song or one recording session. What happened in that RCA studio represented something much bigger. The moment when an artist finally said enough to a system that had been exploiting creative people for decades. Because here's what happened after Jerry walked out. Elvis Presley looked at his business team and said, "We're releasing that song." Not, "Let's negotiate with Jerry Reed." Not, "Let's find another song." He said, "We're releasing it, and we're releasing it exactly as we recorded it." Colonel Tom Parker, the man who had controlled every aspect of Elvis's career, who had built an empire on taking half of everything, had just been beaten by a fisherman from Nashville, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Think about the audacity of that moment. Jerry Reed had just stared down the most powerful manager in music history and won. This wasn't David versus Goliath. This was a nobody from the Cumberland River versus a multi-million-dollar empire, and the nobody walked away with everything. Guitar Man was released in 1968, and it became exactly what everyone in that room knew it would be: a massive hit. It reached #1 on the country charts and cracked the top 50 on the pop charts. More importantly, it became the launching pad for Elvis's comeback. This was the song that proved Elvis could still make real music, that he wasn't just a movie star playing dress-up. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. This was right before the famous '68 comeback special, and Guitar Man helped set the stage for Elvis's return to live performance. Jerry Reed's stubborn refusal to give up his publishing rights had literally helped save Elvis's career, but the impact went far beyond just Elvis and Jerry. Word travels fast in Nashville, and soon every songwriter in town knew the story. Jerry Reed had done something that was supposedly impossible. He'd beaten Colonel Tom Parker at his own game. He'd proven that artists didn't have to accept exploitation as the price of success. This is why Jerry Reed's story is so important. In an industry built on taking advantage of creative people, Jerry Reed showed that sometimes, if you're smart enough and brave enough, you can win. He understood something that most artists never figure out. Your leverage isn't just your talent. It's understanding when you're irreplaceable. Jerry Reed wasn't a huge star. He wasn't a household name. He was a working musician who'd barely had a hit. But in that moment, in that studio, he was the only person in the world who could give Elvis what he needed. And Jerry was smart enough to recognize that power and strong enough to use it. The friendship between Elvis and Jerry continued long after that recording session. Elvis genuinely respected Jerry, not just as a musician, but as a man who wouldn't be pushed around. They recorded together several more times, and Elvis always made sure Jerry was treated with respect. There were no more publishing demands, no more strong-arm tactics. Jerry Reed went on to have an incredible career. Hit songs, movie roles, and a reputation as one of the most innovative guitar players in music history. But people who knew him said he was most proud of that moment when he stood up to the music industry machine and won. Here's the thing about artistic integrity. It's not just about making good music. It's about maintaining control over your own creativity. Jerry Reed understood that giving up half his publishing wasn't just about money. It was about maintaining ownership of his art, his ideas, his creative expression. The music industry is built on the assumption that artists are desperate, that they'll take any deal just for a chance at success. Jerry Reed proved that assumption wrong. He showed that sometimes the best business decision is to walk away from a bad deal, even when it looks like the opportunity of a lifetime. Jerry Reed didn't just save Elvis's career that day, he reminded everyone in that industry that real artists can't be bought, can't be intimidated, and won't be pushed around. That scruffy fisherman from the Cumberland River had done something music industry executives thought was impossible. He'd beaten the system, kept his integrity, and helped create a masterpiece in the process. What do you think? Would you have signed those papers or walked away like Jerry did? This story proves that sometimes the biggest risk is standing up for what you believe in. Hit that subscribe button for more untold stories where underdogs beat the system.